everyone, I am Erika of beadingschool.com and you are watching Coffee Time with Erika, my weekly beady broadcast. I hope that you can hear me and I hope that you can see me. You can watch this broadcast real life on the Beading School Facebook page and also in the Beading School Club. Please let me know in a comment if you can hear me, if you can see me. Would like to know if everything is all right. Tanya is the first to comment. Hi, Tanya. Hope you are doing okay. So, besides Facebook, while I'm waiting for confirmation that it works well, just want to say that besides Facebook, later we will also upload this video, the recording of this video, to the Beading School Facebook channel, YouTube channel. So you will be able to watch that later over there. And today we are going to talk about threads and needles and the first thing that most beaders ask when they sit down to their bead mat for the first time in their life. Do I need to tie a knot? And let's be true to ourselves. This question stays with us even beyond those first few times when we are just getting acquainted with what beads are and how to hold those tiny size 15 ones. So this is a question that returns over and over. So let's talk today about knot or not to knot. In the meanwhile, I got some answers. Kata is here. She says she can hear me and see me, and Connie and Katja. Carol Dean Sharp is here. Welcome, Carol. And Donna and Sherry, Marianne, Lutka, Sherry, Sandra, Faye, Sarah, Marianska, Nikoli, Niti, Zuzi, Antoinette, Aniko, Corinne. Welcome, ladies. If you haven't heard your name, then it means that you need to enable my broadcasting program to see your face and see your name so that I can greet you personally, like, hi, Ginny, and hi, Marta. If you would like to. I like greeting you personally. So first of all, I would like to say a huge, big thank you to everyone who decided to place an order last week, taking advantage of the special deal that we set up for the students of the Beading School Academy. Thank you so much, ladies, for supporting us and making sure that we can bring you new creative content. And the ladies in the treasury, they are working hard day by day on packing your orders, packing your boxes. So please watch out for the emails letting you know if your package is on the way. It also will contain the tracking number. We are sending everything with a tracking number. And in the meanwhile, Deb, Laura, Christine, Natalie, welcome, ladies. And let's start talking about threads, needle, and knotting, as I promised. And when I want to answer the question, do I need to tie a knot? Do you need to tie a knot? Then I have to say that there is no simple answer to this question. And as I just said, we return to this every time when we try a new thread, a new stitch, or even new types of beads. They all behave differently, and our personal preferences might also vary, of course, and even might change over time. Today, I would like to share with you what works best for me, and I am also really looking forward to hear your opinions. So please keep sharing your own experience. It's wonderful to learn from each other. That's why we are here. And please note that it's not possible to talk about knotting without starting with a few sentences about the thread that I like to use, and also a bit about the different types of needles. So different types of threads behave in different ways. So it might also make a difference if you need to knot or not need to knot. And more rigid thread requires less knotting, while, for example, I can't keep good thread tension when using very soft, thin thread. I will also briefly mention the needles that I like to use, and afterwards I will get to some specific situations that require different approach to knotting. So, what type of thread am I using? And those of you who watch No One Has to Bead Alone, my Friday afternoon or morning or evening, depending on your own time zone, free workshop regularly, then you know that my go-to thread is FIRELINE. I use the 4LB 0.005 inch average diameter one. For European folks, it's the 0.12 millimeter. When I started to bead, there was a very limited choice of beading thread available. In fact, the one that I started with originally wasn't even made for beaders. We called it leather sewing thread, and shoemakers were just as familiar with it as us crafters that time. It frayed, it didn't give enough support to bigger motifs, but I was super happy with it that time, as it fits through my first tiny beading needle and even through the tiniest size 15 seed beads. And during the following 15 years, I experimented with many different types of thread. And for a long time already, my first choice is always FIRELINE, specifically this one that I am showing you at the moment. I always use the black satin, by the way. I like it because I can easily hold good thread tension. It's not too soft and not too rigid. And using an average beading needle, I can bead with it about 10 times through a size 15 Miyuki round seed bead, and about 15 times through a size 11 Miyuki Delica that has a slightly bigger hole than the round seed bead. What is your favorite beading thread? I would be super curious to hear your choice. And in the meanwhile, as I am waiting for your answers, I would like to just name a few exceptions when I am not using FIRELINE, or not specifically this type, this width, or this color. So it's nice, but in my opinion, not absolutely necessary to have thinner and thicker FIRELINE on hand. The thicker might be of good use, for example, when you are stringing a necklace of heavier glass beads, and the thinner might come handy for delicate lace-like embellishments. One of my friends, Eva, you know her from the Beading School Club, Eva Kalman, she even prepared a tutorial, the Tanta tutorial for you recently for the Beading School blog. I know that she likes to use the thicker type, for example, for a base of a beaded bead, and then she likes to switch to a thinner one to make sure that she can embellish it in nice ways. If I have a thicker thread, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to show you something that came to my mind, and I have some thread tangled here, so it's not so easy to show it. So I would like to use thicker FIRELINE. I actually ran out of it a while ago and never got it again, so I can totally live without it. But I would use the thicker FIRELINE when I am creating, for example, strands of necklaces from glass pearls, as they tend to be heavy. So over time, it could stretch, the FIRELINE could stretch a little bit, and then you would have tiny gaps in between the beads. I prevent that from happening by beading back and forth a few times and using double thread for this time. By the way, the necklace that I'm holding at the moment, it's the third piece that I have created for you from the Beading School Academy team box, the new one, the Art Deco. Of course, the pearls fit the big Gatsby theme so well. And we will have a separate coffee time with Erika where I will be showing all the jewels that I have created from the box. But just to give you a fast, quick view, this is something that is waiting for you. And let's see your answers. I just asked you that what kind of thread do you like to use? Carol likes to use the 4LB FIRELINE almost always, like I do. Carol, you know, I'm pretty sure you know Carol with her exquisite peyote bracelets. So that's a technique that's good to remember then. If Carol chooses the 4LB FIRELINE, then it will work well. Cynthia says she likes FIRELINE and Nanofill. Natalie says that she likes to use also the black satin, but she likes the 6LB and the 8LB for heavier beads indeed. Mariana likes a bit thinner than I do, the 0.10 millimeter. And then Ginny says, I love FIRELINE. It is so easy to thread the needle compared to many others. I agree. I think my troubles with threading needles disappeared completely since I switched to FIRELINE. Mette is also a FIRELINE lady. And Cheryl says, I like 𝐁𝐄 and 1G. I found it was too tight with FIRELINE, but still use it for 3D items, just the 4LB. And indeed, it really depends on your own preferences, on your own choices, on your own usual thread tension, that what kind of thread will work for you best. And I still didn't get to my exceptions when I'm not using FIRELINE. So I mentioned you the thinner and the thicker. And about the color, when would I use something else than the black satin? I would use it if I used transparent or crystal clear beads, but it doesn't really happen to me. So that's something I'm not even considering at the moment of getting the crystal clear FIRELINE, but it would be, of course, a good choice for you if you like softer shades. And the one case when I don't like to use FIRELINE is when I'm making a fringe. So as you can see here on the Safekeeper necklace, then FIRELINE creates, well, the fringe, it just requires a softer type of thread, and FIRELINE would make it too rigid. And Aniko is telling about the Miyuki thread. She says, most of the time I use FIRELINE. However, I like Miyuki beading thread for bezeling because it is easy to adjust the tension of the bezel when ready. I use green Nanofill for bead embroidery because it suits almost every color. Thank you so much for sharing. And Claire says, I was always a 𝐁𝐄 girl, but I have recently converted to FIRELINE. I managed to buy a big reel last time when we went to the States. Friends have asked me to bring some back from them next year. I'm thinking of trying Nanofill. So Annette says she agrees on the fringe. And let's talk a bit about the needles. So usually I keep 3 different beading needles stuck to the corner of my bead mat. However, size 11, where is the picture of size 11? Of course, the last one. Size 11, what I use for 99% of my beading time. Size 12 is great if I need to pass through tight holes. the bigger the number, then the thinner the needle. It works the same way as with numbering of the beads. So 12 is great if I need to pass through some tighter holes. It's super thin, but also it is a bit too flexible for my taste. So after the tricky spot, I like to switch back to the size 11. Needle. And the size 10 needle I use for finishing the edges of my bead embroidery when I'm passing through 2 layers of ultra suede or an ultra suede and leather, for example. It's also useful when I need the needle to help me to frog some stitches, and I'm pulling the thread out with the tip of the needle. And it's very personal that what kind of brand and which is the thickness that you like to use, and what works for me might not work perfectly for you. So I really recommend to try different options and to see that what works the best for you. And just don't give up and try different ones until you find the one that feels good for you. So Cynthia says, in the meanwhile, please share your thoughts about beading needles. What do you like? What is your personal preference? What is something that you avoid? Let's share it. Let's share and let's read each other's opinions. And Cynthia says, yes, I use sizes 11, 12, and 13 tulip needles. I also like to use the large eye beading needles as well, depending on what I am doing. By the way, I also tried some other brands in the past, and some of them were just really fragile for me. So even if they were cheaper and the long run, it was not more economical. So since I went for tulips, then I am sticking with tulips then, and that's what I'm using basically for everything, including bead weaving and including bead embroidery. Marta says, tulip all the way. She's also a tulip girl. And Carol says, she uses tulips 10 and 11. And Kata also says, since I tried tulip, I didn't use anything else. Natalie says, I once tried size 15 needles, but they were so brittle they broke after 1 or 2 passes. Indeed, somewhere in the depth of my stash, I have super, super fine beading needles, but I like to avoid them as much as possible. Sarah also says she uses always tulip. She's also a girl who likes embroidery and bead weaving too. Sherry likes to use size 10. Corinna likes John James. I know that many people like the John James. Those were the ones that were breaking for me, that they became like nearly unusable. But I know that many beaders like them indeed. And Aniko says, I do the same as Erika. Tulip 11 is the best for me almost always. I use 12 for tight holes, and then I switch back to 11. And Niti says, I just got Miyuki needles from a friend of mine, and I actually quite like them. Time will tell if it beats the tulip at all. Let us know, Niti. I would be super curious to hear. And Yenny is here. She says, when I started bead weaving, I used a short stabile needle and didn't like the long one. Since tulip, nothing else. Indeed, some of our beaders here are also mentioning that there are shorter and longer beading needles available. So that's also determined by your personal choices, that what works best for you. And now it's finally time to get to the part about knotting. And let's ask the very basic question first. Why do we knot? So we knot to create grip. We knot to make sure that the thread doesn't slide out of the holes of the beads, creating gaps between beads or component, resulting in a floppy motif or even making our jewel fall apart. However, knotting is not always the best choice when starting to bead. Sometimes it's good to have strong grip. Sometimes we need a little room for adjustments so the beads can wiggle and settle correctly after we have made a few stitches already. Personally, I knot as little as possible, but when I feel it's necessary, I'm not afraid of knotting. Some beaders say that they are afraid that the knot damages the structure of the thread and it will break easier at that point. But I have to say that I can't really recall an instance when it would have happened to me. My thread usually breaks when I add too much weight, for example, big glass pearls, and I'm not repeating the thread passes enough times, or when I accidentally push my needle through the thread, or if it was already damaged or got damaged during frogging, untangling, or got caught in a prong, a clasp, or other metal component. These are the situations that you need to avoid while beading to keep your thread healthy. And an important advice, don't work with too long thread, longer than a wingspan. It is indeed tempting to avoid securing and attaching a new thread, but in the long run, it doesn't pay off. The more times you pull your thread through beads, the bigger the chance that the thread gets damaged, and it will indeed break. And another advice, when it comes to thread, don't go cheap. Avoid using the ordinary basic fishing line or stretchy cord, please. And also, I don't recommend gluing when securing your thread. Instead, make sure to leave a long enough tail thread and working end before finishing in order to be able to secure them professionally, making sure your jewel look nice and also prolonging its lifespan. I like to leave about 5-6 inches, 10-12 centimeters of thread that I can weave in later when I finish, repeating previous thread passes without adding any more new beads. For trimming the end, I like to use more sharp scissors or a thread burner. This one was a gift from Niti, by the way. Thank you so much. It seriously improved my beading life. Dull scissors make it impossible to cut the thread exactly where you need to cut it, and you can easily be left with a few millimeters of thread that you can't remove anymore without a thread burner. In the past, before the era of the thread burners, some would advise to use a lighter to remove the thread ends, but I would be so afraid to get close to my precious beadwork with an open fire, I have to say. Thread burners made our life so much easier, and we just need to be careful not to burn more than intended if there are more threads passing at the same spot and you need to remove the tail. And please avoid touching the surface of beads, especially the specially coated ones. And let's see your comments in the meanwhile. So Corina says she doesn't like knotting. And Cheryl says, the bigger the bead size, the more likely I will knot. But if I can weave lots, then I prefer to do that. Oh, Susie says she's also Team Tulip. And Claire says, I prefer not to knot, as it makes frogging much easier. Good point, Claire, good point. Lutka also says that if she can, she avoids knotting. And now, some very specific situations when I like to knot or when I specifically like to avoid knotting. So I will also share my hand camera in the meanwhile. So a good trick for the beginning, if it's tricky for you to hold proper tension without knotting, then you can try using a stopper bead. Add an extra round 11, for example, or Miyuki Delica 11 at the very beginning by beading through it several times. I'm showing it to you now on my hand camera. So I like to choose, if I use a stopper bead, then it's always of an accenting color, something that I don't use in my beadwork. And I start by beading through it, for example, 2 times to create grip, to make sure that it stays where I need it to stay, or even 3 times, but that I can remove it after I don't need it anymore. And you can just, after adding that stopper bead, you can just start beading, and when you don't need it anymore, then you can easily remove it from the end of your thread. And some very good advice. In the meanwhile, I don't want to miss these comments. Cynthia also loves the thread burners. Shirley doesn't knot when she works with flat peyote, but she's not afraid to knot otherwise. Ginny says, if my piece is tight, I do not knot. If it is softer and looser, I feel it's necessary. Martha says, I use tweezers to pull up the thread from the beads before I use the thread burners. That's awesome. Then we have a Facebook user friend. I prefer to knot the tail after the work is done. It helps if I need to frog the piece and prevents blocking the beads while working. Cynthia also likes a stopper bead. And Jenny is asking, what is frogging? So what does a frog say? The frog says, rip it, rip it. So when you need to remove part of your already done beadwork, then we call it in beader lingo frogging, ripping it out. And Corinna says, I use the work's first bead as stopper bead, going through it twice. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, and now some other examples. I never knot when I am starting a peyote bezel. The beads need a bit of room to wiggle and set where they want, and a knot would prevent that. If you would like, by the way, some extra advice regarding peyote bezels, then please find the Forget Me Not free tutorial on my page, thebeadingschool.com. And on a side note, I used to have trouble when starting peyote bezels for bigger cabochons, for example, a 27mm round stone. As usually, my tension was too strong then, and often it happened to me that the thread broke after a few steps. I learned to avoid this unpleasant situation by starting my big bezels in a different way. I'm going to share now a video titled My Favorite Peyote Tricks, and there you can see how do I start my big peyote bezels. But it doesn't matter if it's a small peyote bezel or a big peyote bezel, I never tie a knot for peyote bezels. Aniko also says, I never knot when bezeling because it makes difficult to adjust tension of the bezels. On the other hand, when I am beading a square stitch bezel, we use that a lot recently, and it's even included in the new jewel that I have designed for you to go with the Beading School Academy box, the Art Deco one. So the one in the middle, the nacre, the Preciosa Nacre Pearl cabochon, it is it is bezeled with square stitch instead of peyote. To give you a comparison, with peyote, the beads are not in one line, but they create a zip-like look. And with the square stitch bezel, we are creating nice, smooth lines of beads. And they look the best if they are really aligned to each other. If you haven't tried the square stitch bezel yet, then I have a free tutorial available at the Beading School blog waiting for you. I am posting the link to make it easier for you to find. And on the square stitch bezel, in difference to the peyote one, requires a different approach. It looks the best if the circles of beads are completely straight and the beads are aligned perfectly. But in this case, I create a grip by repeating the circle, especially the first circle, 2 times, but still I don't knot. And then after adding each circle of beads, as Niti called it in a comment, creating this calm, this pool of calmness, if I recall it right, then it looks the best with this straight lines, but I don't knot, I repeat thread passes. And Cynthia says, in the meanwhile, I always have a hard time bezeling cabochons. I was trying to do it this weekend and frogged it a few times. I'm going to try it again, hopefully today. Plus, I have never done stitch in the ditch either. Cynthia, if you have any questions, make sure to post it together. The best is if you post it together with a picture in the Beading School Club so we can help you. And good luck with your bezels. I am looking forward to see the result and also to helping you. Susie says, in the meanwhile, I tried square stitch bezel for 8mm Preciosa chatons recently, and it is such a lovely look. I'm glad that you like it. So after 2 examples when I am not knotting, I would like to give you an example when I am indeed knotting. So I always tie a knot when I start a juval with bigger beads. The holes are bigger and the thread would slide out easily otherwise. A recent example is the Perry pillow. I forgot to upload that picture, I'm sorry, but also the Helga set. So I like to repeat the first circle fully after picking up the beads, and only then I knot. I will show it to you on my bead mat. So let's start, for example, with 6 pieces of 6mm round glass pearls. So I pick them up on my needle. I want to create a circle. And theoretically, then I could embellish that circle further. And since the hole is bigger, there is not easy to get a grip without knotting, then I will tie a knot. However, my favorite way of starting such a motif is by repeating that first thread pass. So now my tail thread and my working thread are exiting opposite of each other, and only then I like to tie a knot. I always tie double knots, and after knotting, I bead through the next bead, and then I gently pull the thread so the knot slides into the hole of the big bead. That also tells you about my preference when finding a good spot to knot. I like to do it before beading through a big bead to get a chance for hiding the knot inside the big bead. It wouldn't be possible between 2 size 15 seed beads, for example. Let's see your comments in the meanwhile. Ginny says, I had trouble when I began, but then I did a project that had a large number of 8mm bezels and I got much better. I guess practice is the key. Indeed, Ginny. Indeed, I agree. Someone is asking, are you creating a particular pattern as the example? Not at the moment. I really got fond of live designs when I am creating a pattern during a live broadcast and we all put our heads together and we brainstorm together. And actually, I have just finished drawing the instructions of a pair of earrings that we created together this way during the last live design session that I've had. So this is the pair of earrings. We were still in India mood back then. And the tutorial for these earrings, it will soon be very soon available at the Beading School blog and also as a downloadable PDF file at beadingschool.com. But now it's not a specific design. I'm just showing you quick, small examples. And hi, Barbara. Ginny also likes to bury the knot. Cynthia says, I tie knots too and pull them through the bead. I am learning to try not to tie knots with the smaller beads so that I am more comfortable doing it both ways. And indeed, when we have smaller beads, I have lots of designs. We are beading lots of designs, especially from past year, from No One Has to Bead Alone, where we have started, for example, with a circle of half tila beads. And in that case, I am not tying a knot. For example, now I pick up 6 pieces of Miyuki half tila beads, and then I do the same as I did with the 6mm round pearls that I bead through all of them through the same hole one more time. But now instead of tying a knot, I bead through the very first one more time. And usually this is enough for me. What I like to do, that I wrap the thread around my index finger, and at the beginning that helps me to keep good thread tension instead of having to tie a knot. Imagine, like, if I continued with this design, I would probably put in, for example, seed beads in between the first holes, or I could also bead up to the open hole and continue by filling the spaces between the second holes. And I find that in that case, I don't necessarily need to tie a knot. And an exception, when actually, I guess I tie a lot more knots than the average beader is when I'm working with bead embroidery. If you would like to look into my bead embroidery tutorials, then I am sharing. I have a bunch for beginners and also a bunch of advanced bead embroidery projects available on YouTube, some of them with files accompanying them that you can download from beadingschool.com. So if you look into some of my videos about the basics of bead embroidery, then you will find that I tie lots of knots. Basically, the idea came from my husband, who is our IT guy, Adam, at beadingschool.com. Once when he saw me so many times frogging and so many times starting completely from the beginning, he asked me, or he told me, isn't there a way of like saving and then reloading your work as we do in IT? And when I knot in bead embroidery, then it makes it possible for me. I always knot on the back side. I start by making a big knot. And also I like to tie knots after every circle or every step that I create in my bead embroidered pieces. Sometimes it happened to me that a lot later I found that I don't like some beads that I added a lot earlier, and then I could cut my thread between two knots, and it was in a way saving and reloading my work. If you use a thicker piece of fabric or leather on the back of your bead embroidery, then it will hide your knots. However, if I pull out my needle and my drawers, then okay, now they are full of Ziploc bags, actually, empty Ziploc bags that I am reusing. But I also like to keep on hand some pieces of thin waxed cardboard papers. They come usually from some fancier kind of chocolate. And after I finish my bead embroidery, I cut out the shape from that first layer on the working layer, the foundation. Then I cover the back of my bead embroidery with that thin layer of cardboard, and I cut the cardboard just a millimeter or two smaller than my foundation. The cardboard is rigid, is super sturdy. So on one hand, I find it super helpful when I am creating some extra shapes, like this crescent moon for the Moonlight Sonata earrings tutorial on YouTube. And also, it hides my knots. It does not matter if I have 10 knots, 20 knots. It does not matter if the knots are huge. The cardboard hides them perfectly. I cut the cardboard a bit smaller. So then when I glue on a second layer, or actually that's the third layer already, I usually use leather or another layer of ultra suede for the backing of my bead embroidery. Then I'm connecting with my size 10 beading needle with the thicker one on only the foundation and the backing, and I don't have to push my needle through the cardboard while it still does its jobs in the middle. And I think that's what I wanted to tell you about knotting and threads and needles. And let's see the comments, and if you have any questions, then let me know in a comment. Let's share what we know about knotting and not knotting. Cheryl says, yes, I learned to do lots of knots when bead embroidering. A wise lesson learned from Erika. Cheryl, I'm really happy that it helped you. Cynthia says, thank you, Erika, because of just ordered the turtle kit embroiderer. Wonderful. Have fun with your turtle. Sherry also ties a lot of knots in embroidery. Then she can make changes easily. Sunshine is asking, is it okay to create from a video if there is not a pattern on beadingschool.com? From a video, yes. From a picture, no. Thank you so much for asking. Corinne asks, you mean cardboards from chocolate, right? Of course. Kali says, oh, chocolate. So, someone asks, is there a way to prevent bending needles? I don't think so. Sometimes I actually find that slightly bent needles work better for me than brand new ones. And no, you can try strengthening them with, there are, for example, pliers which have a plastic finish instead of a metal tip. And then you can try strengthening the needles, but over time they will bend. And it's not always necessarily a bad thing. But of course, extreme bends can prevent you from working well. And to finish this video about threads, needle, and knotting, I have a special deal for you. And just a sec, I'm looking for my picture. I forgot to upload my picture. what a shame. Just a moment. So my colleague Andrea, she has just activated some new types of new thicknesses and even crystal FIRELINE if you might need it, if you might like working with it. And starting from now, all those FIRELINEs and also all the tulip needles, the ones I mentioned earlier, sizes 10, 11, and 12, and the complete assortment of FIRELINE, we will offer it to you with 17% off. So if you would like to get a new spool of FIRELINE, or you would like to level up and try the tulip beading needles finally, then this is your best chance. And starting now and finishing next week when the next Coffee Time with Erika starts, you can enjoy everything from the thread and needle categories at beadingschool.com with 17% off. We make it easy for you, so you don't need to enter any coupon codes. The discount is automatically applied. In this case, you don't even need to create an account or log in if you don't want to. Last week we had a special sale only for our Beading School Academy students, and then we need you to log in. But this time it's for everyone. So I have just shared the links leading you directly to the tools category where you can find the FIRELINE and the needles. And I would like to thank you for your attention today. I love spending my Tuesday afternoons with you ladies. Thank you also for all the valuable tips and tricks that you shared during today's coffee time. I will actually do my best to publish also a blog post at the Beading School blog about this topic, since anyway, I have my notes written already, so I would like to make it available for you also in a written form. So I am really looking forward again to beading with you on Friday during NoOneHasToBeadAlone.com. If you haven't heard of NoOneHasToBeadAlone.com yet, then visit please NoOneHasToBeadAlone.com to learn more about it. And a little info, last weekend we had a technical glitch with the download of the tutorial. So now it's fixed and you will be able to download it until Friday, until I publish the new one for you. Thank you so much again. Take care, my beading friends. Wishing you lots of creative ideas, and I can't wait to see your new beautiful jewels in the Beading School Club. And by the way, I just noticed a last note at the edge of my paper. We have some more spots available at the Beading School Academy. So that's the last link that I am sharing now, and the last piece of information. And thank you so much again for your attention, and wishing you a beautiful rest of the day. Bye-bye.